This story has been recorded at an Addictive Eaters Anonymous meeting in New Zealand. You can email us at contact@aeanz.org.
So I would very much like to introduce Esther as our speaker.
Thanks, Robin. I'm Esther. I'm an addictive eater. Yeah, I just wanted to actually start with a reading. I know that might be a little bit unusual, but it does sum up my story, which I'm going to tell today. And it's called In God's Economy. It's from As Bill Sees It on page 31. So in God's economy, nothing is wasted. Through failure, we learn a lesson in humility, which is probably needed, painful though it is. And then it says, we did not always come closer to wisdom by reason of our virtues. Our better understanding is often rooted in the pains of our former follies. Because this has been the essence of our individual experience, it is also the essence of our experience as a fellowship. And I chose to read that because when I first started coming to meetings like these, and I used to hear people tell these stories, I thought that what happened was that you started coming to meetings, you got it straight away, and then you just were perfect for the rest of your life. You lived happily ever after and you told other people how to do it. And that was what I believed that would happen for me. And that wasn't my experience. I was very relieved to find a fellowship of people who ate like I did, and particularly who felt like I did. I was thinking back to what I was like as a child. So there were two sides. One was the way I ate, and the other was just how I was, And I was remembering how when I was younger and I would have a friend to come over to play, and the other child would want to play with me, I could last for maybe an hour and a half. And then I'd run away and hide, and my mother would have to entertain the other child because I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't be around someone for that long, and I was quite an isolator. And I used to read a lot of books, and I could barely look anyone in the eye as a child. And yeah, I felt like things didn't quite add up, for me. And then there was my eating, which I think I first remember from about the age of 6 or 7. And the thing I remember is this little voice, or kind of, I don't even know what it was, but there was something inside me that would get a thought about some particular item of food, and it wouldn't leave me alone. The thought just wouldn't go away until I went and got this item of food. And I always thought I'd only have one, or just only a tiny bit, because it was, I wasn't allowed to help myself and I didn't want to get caught. And so I'd have it, and then I just could not stop, and I would eat so much that I was terrified because I didn't like getting in trouble. And I knew my mother would find out, and she generally did. And she'd come to me and she'd say, "Did you eat this?" And she had a thing that, it was really important to her that we were honest. And so if I had told the truth and said, yes, it was me, I wouldn't have got in trouble. But I could never be honest. And I knew she knew it was me, and I knew she knew I was lying, but I would still lie. And then I'd get in worse trouble and I would be ashamed. And, I didn't know why I did it, but that's what I did. And then, I felt a lot of shame about what I did. And the other memory I've had recently is going into my grandmother's purse. So my grandmother was staying with us, and she must have had her purse in the living room, and I remember sneaking in there and getting in there and just getting my hand inside, and I'm pretty sure I was taking out a note, and she walked in and she saw me, And she never said anything about it. Like she never told me off. She never told my mother. But I remember the shame, you know, of being caught, and particularly by my grandmother. I don't know why, but that made it worse. So yeah, I just had all that, you know, in me. And yeah, my parents knew something was wrong, because when I was only about 10, they sent me to a self-confidence course, which didn't solve any problems for me. But and then yeah, when I was about 10, I remember my auntie saying to my mother, Esther's starting to get a bit chubby, because I'd always been skinny before then. And my mother was furious. She was just so angry, because my cousins had always been chubby, you know, when they were younger, and me and my sisters never had. And she was just so furious with my auntie, but it was true. And yeah, and so from then on I put on weight, and yeah, and I was not really aware of that, I don't think, until I got to about 15, and I noticed that I was quite significantly overweight. And then that became a good reason for why I felt like I did. You know, I blamed my size on how I felt, but actually I'd felt like that probably my whole life, you know, just ashamed, not, you know, just like not worth much, kind of in my own mind. And so, you know, I did start trying to do little things about my weight, but I was never, you know, it wasn't a big thing until a bit later on. I remember I felt good if I lost weight. You know, I would lose a little bit of weight and I'd feel good. And then I would go into putting on weight and I would feel horrible. And that, you know, that's just a memory I have from back then. And then those two extremes got more and more extreme over time. And before I started coming to meetings like these, I spent a year quite significantly, just doing bizarre things basically to control my eating. Like I couldn't just go on a normal diet. So I just did so many bizarre things. You know, I became a vegan. I used to go through different phases, like not eating anything until dinner time, or only eating every second day, or drinking lots and lots and lots of water so I wouldn't feel like eating. Or just, you know, bizarre. And then just one day, I think I realized that I'd been vegan for a year, and I thought, right, I'll celebrate. And I thought I'll just have a packet of biscuits, you know, like I'll buy a packet of biscuits, and they were not vegan. They were, and I told myself I was doing it for the animals, but of course I wasn't. And I had this one biscuit and I was off, you know, and I never got back to being able to control my eating. And yeah, and the thing that got me to seek help wasn't what I put in my mouth, it was my thoughts, because my mind, my thinking was just like on an endless loop of, you know, I want to eat, I want to eat, I want to lose weight, I want to eat, I want to, you know, like it just went round and round and round in my head. One day it just was going round and round so much that I picked up the phone and I rang this number, and, you know, it was a message and it said, ring these, you know, there's these 3 numbers. And I rang those numbers non-stop all day. I think it was a Saturday. And eventually in the afternoon, I got hold of one of the people, and she said, oh, I can meet you in a week's time. And I said, I can't wait that long. I need help now. But anyway, we did arrange it. She did meet me in a week's time. And by then I was fine, like, you know, absolutely fine, you know. And I did go and meet her, but I didn't really listen to her. I looked at all the differences. And at that stage I was 21. I was at university. I hadn't had any experience in the mental health system or anything like that, and that was some of what she shared with me. And, you know, she had bad teeth, and I thought, oh, she was probably bulimic, and that wasn't something I'd done. I mean, I had tried, but I had never been successful at it. So I thought, well, I'm not bulimic. And yeah, so I went away, but she must have passed my number on to someone else, and that person rang me just out of the blue one day, and you know, and I just couldn't believe it. Like, I just couldn't believe that someone I'd never met would ring me. And she rang me from Hamilton, where I was in Wellington and she was in Hamilton for work. And she just said, you know, just ringing to see how you're doing. And I just couldn't believe it, because I felt so alone with what I was doing, and the fact that this person would ring me meant a lot. And so I think it was only a short time later I rang her back and I went to meet with her. And this time I could hear what she was saying and I could relate, and, you know, and I got to a meeting, and then after that first meeting I did, you know, something must have happened, because I haven't left, and I've kept coming, and I've stuck with that person as still my sponsor today. But I didn't get this program straight away, because, you know, I thought it was, you know, like I said, I thought you just did it, you know, you just did it, and you did it to the best of your ability. And then, you know, and I was used to being quite a diligent type of person, and, you know, I thought, you know, and I just thought I could, you know, follow on with what others did, and that I would get it. And, you know, and for a few years things were okay, and things seemed a lot better because I wasn't shoveling food into my face. But I never lost this really underlying sense of dread that I had. And I didn't really understand, I'd never got a relationship with a higher power. You know, it was just beyond me, basically. And but all it took was for things to get worse, which they did, you know, which is, you know, that's what this, you know, I just believe this thing is progressive. So, you know, wherever it's at today, you know, it will progress. And that was what it was like for me. It just got worse, and it was it was worse in my head, and it was worse, you know, basically just I could no longer cope with my life. And you know, and I didn't know what was wrong. I had no idea. I thought, you know, I'm a good member of this fellowship, and, you know, and everything started to fall apart, and, you know, I could barely work. All my relationships were a mess, an absolute mess, with my family and my husband, and my friendships had gone by the wayside. And I just had this constant negative stream of thoughts going through my head just all the time. And anyway, one day I went to a meeting, and it was in Wellington, but we had a visitor from another city who'd been in the program for a very long time, and she shared, and I'd heard her story before, but I came home that night, went to bed, and woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought, oh my God, I don't have what she's got. And I realized, I thought, it's the exercise, you know, I exercise like I ate, you know, I've got an addiction, and my eating has turned into exercise. And, you know, and that was the first time I'd been able to be honest, even with myself, about that. And I rang someone in the program about it, and it was the end of the world. Like, it just was the absolute end of the world in my mind, and I was bawling my eyes out. And I rang someone in the program and told her, my sponsor was overseas, I think, and so I was ringing another person, and I told her what had been going on. And I mentioned the other person from the meeting the night before, and I said, you know, I just don't have what you've got, and I don't have what she's got. And she said, oh, no dear, well, she wasted my time for many years, just like you, you know. And she was light about it. And I guess that did two things. One thing was I thought, I really want to stop. And secondly, I thought, I'm not the only one who has, you know, stuff this thing out, basically. And I decided I have to stop. I just absolutely have to stop. And I couldn't. Like, I just couldn't stop. And yeah, so I would get a thought in my head before I even knew it, and I'd be back doing exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. And that happened a few times, and I actually don't know the true order of things. I just cannot remember because of how chaotic, or just messy things were at that time. So I don't know if I got on my knees and prayed for a sober day before all that happened, or I did it after that all happened. I just don't know. But I do believe that God had a hand in the fact that I got to where I got to, and I surrendered. So I did. I just knew I absolutely needed sobriety, but I absolutely couldn't do it. And so I prayed, and the first kind of, well, maybe not the first sincere prayer, but the first hopeless prayer, maybe. Like, I had really given it hope. And yeah, and I didn't think that I would get it. And then, and then I was left without, having to pick up the first one, but I didn't know it for quite a long time. But I was left stone cold sober and very, very uncomfortable with a mess of a life, and just feeling like I was just holding on by a thread, basically. But so it meant I hang on to things people said to me. They said, I remember ringing up in a lot of self-pity and someone saying to me, "What have you done for another addictive eater today?" And I hang on to that because I thought, if I do at least one thing today, then I won't have to eat. I was suddenly, because I thought I had done the steps, but I couldn't because I hadn't done step one. And so I did a step 4 and 5, and it was quite different from anything I'd done before. It wasn't the bad stuff I'd done, and it wasn't, it was who I am as a person. And I looked back, to my childhood and what I was like as a child and what that was like for the people around me. And that was what I shared. And then I shared about what I was like, as a young person, and like, how that affected other people. And the thing when I did my 5th step, the thing I really didn't want to say to my sponsor was, and I just had this moment, like it kind of just came to me in a flash. I really didn't want to say it, but I did. And I just said, I always want to be better than everyone else. Like that was at the heart of all the way that I was. And that felt, quite cathartic, actually being that honest with someone about myself. And then I started going back. I had done amends in the past, but it was just different. I can't even explain it, but I could see how I had hurt other people, and I really went into every corner and cleaned up every little speck of dust that I could find. And then just took it a day at a time, because I just really didn't trust myself at all, and I was mad. And but something had changed inside me, so I was changing, I believe. And I remember this. We had a story published in a little community newspaper in Wellington, and it got kind of spread around some of the other local papers. So some people rang from out of town and wanted someone to come and talk to them. And, so it was a 12-step call, and there were 2 women, and it was about over an hour away by car. And at that stage, I hadn't even driven myself an hour for a long time because I was just such a mess. I couldn't do anything. And I knew I had to go and talk to these two women. I tried to find someone else to go with me or drive me, or, you know, and I had to do it myself. There was no one else who could do it. And so I drove out and did these 2 12-step calls. Neither of those people has ever, as far as I know, been to a meeting. But I got home and I was sitting out on my front step and I just had this amazing feeling like everything is okay. You know, absolutely everything is okay. And that was the first time, I believe, I consciously remember feeling like that. And, you know, things have got better, you know, over time. And, you know, all that mess that I had has gradually been cleared up. And it hasn't been anything that I've done. I mean, I have taken some actions, but I definitely can't take credit for the fact that I'm not in a mess today. Yeah, and I just, yeah, kind of thinking of examples, but yeah, one thing was that my relationship with my family had really badly, they didn't trust me because of where my disease had taken me. You know, like my mum said, you know, I know it's your disease, but I cannot trust you. You know, she said that to me one day. And that was gut-wrenching. And I didn't know what to do about it. And then what happened was, I remember the next time we went to visit them, oh no, that's right. So she said that to me, and then I think it was, and then there was a huge blow up, huge argument. And I heard my mother crying in the night to my father in the bedroom next door. And then in the morning, I heard her get up early because she had to go to work, but she'd asked me to put out the rubbish. And I didn't quite know what she wanted me to do, like where the stuff was, which bag to put it in. And I thought I have to get up and ask her before she goes. And I absolutely did not want to do it because I knew all the stuff would start all over again. But I had been praying the St. Francis prayer over and over and over again to get through this horrible night where my mother was crying. And so I got up and I said to her, you know, what do you want me to do? Can I, you know, I want to help. And she, you know, she got angry again and brought up the stuff that had happened the night before. And I just said to her quietly, oh, Mum, I just don't think it's all me. And then I found out what she wanted me to do and I put out the rubbish. And it sounds so pathetic, but the fact that I cared enough to do something for her was a turning point. And you know, the next time we went and visited, we didn't stay there after all of it. But Mum had organised a family picnic and I thought, oh, what should we should probably bring something. And this is a new idea, this is a new concept for me. Because, you know, Mum always does that. And so I took some food for this picnic lunch. And that was another, you know, it was just like that and it slowly got better and it's a lot better. You know, now it's just beyond, you know, I don't blame my mother for anything anymore. It was always her fault. And, you know, I know she trusts me. She's never said it, but I can just tell that she does. And, you know, and I've got these 2 children who, you know, her grandchildren who she's a very devoted grandmother. She spoils the heck out of them. But, you know, that none of that was in the pipeline, you know, I just wouldn't have been able to do that. Yeah, and I continue to think, oh, right, I've got it now, you know, the rest of my life will be plain sailing, but it's not. That's not how it works. And, you know, just recently, there's been a few things. You know, it's funny, you know, how I said about the children coming around to play when I was young and, you know, I couldn't wait for them to go home once they were there. And it's like, I've got these 2 children around to play, but they're here all the time. And it's like, at the moment, there's no escaping. They're just, you know, here. And for me, that's actually been quite, you know, I haven't found it easy. I'm not a natural at this thing at all. And I also, you know, kind of came to a point with my work where I realized my job was too much for me, and you know, very complicated situation that I was working in. Well, just the project I was working on is very, very complicated, and so I had to make a decision, but it was very hard for me to decide. And I had been offered a job that's much better for me and my family, that's, you know, much less responsibility. But I had to make a decision, and that was quite hard for me to make a decision, but I have made it and I feel better now. And then at the same time, like my, this is all happening at exactly the same time. I'd, you know, got too thin, and, you know, and I don't believe it was deliberate, but I had, and I, you know, have had to give up all my ideas about what should be on my food plan, you know, and just absolutely take direction every single day. And it's just, you know, I'm actually, you know, at first I didn't find it easy, and I felt like a newcomer, but I'm just so grateful that I have that, because what I want today is to be whole. You know, like it talks about restored to sanity, and for me that's, you know, to be, it's like whole, you know, I didn't like that word sanity because it's like implies that you're insane, but I have heard it described as like wholeness. And I actually was insane. I just didn't know it for a long time. But, you know, what I want today, I really want to be well. I want to experience the things that being well brings in my life. So for instance, not being afraid in situations that I would have been afraid in, you know, like that is huge for me, you know, and you know, just being able to I'm just trying to think, you know, can't think of any other good examples, but, you know, like that's actually what I want. And, you know, I still have this disease, and so the first thought can still be very unwell, but I'm much quicker now. Like I immediately can have a different thought, and, you know, that'll be the well thought, and you know, and I'll do the opposite of what the disease is telling me, which is, you know, yeah, it's just, and, you know, today I've actually had the most lovely day. I've spent the whole day with my children, and I haven't tried to do too much else other than that. I mean, I've done a few jobs, but, and I've actually really enjoyed it, and I haven't had that feeling I've just got to get away. I haven't felt like that today. And I haven't had to eat, and I was actually thinking about that, you know, we're all in our own homes. And for me, you know, the kitchen is just out that door and on the other side. And my kitchen is not a problem for me today. You know, my kitchen, where the food is not, you know, it's just where I go to do the things I need to do. It's not beckoning me, or, you know, I'm just so relieved that I don't have that today, because that was my life, and I knew it would be my whole life. I just knew I would always be like that. And yeah, and it's really just been this program, you know, it's just been the amazing luck I feel that I've had. I don't know if it's luck, I guess it's not luck, it's God, you know, because I did, you know, ask for help, you know, that I have this, what I've got today. Yeah, and it's just lovely, and just really encourage anyone who's new to keep coming, and just keep coming for as long as it takes, because, you know, for me, that story I've just told, it took me 7 years, to get surrender, but it was worth it, you know, every moment that I had to, you know, spend not getting it was all worth it. And that's actually I'll finish on this because that's probably enough, but I was very ashamed of the fact that I had found out that I'd still been eating after 7 years, and I thought this will never be any use to anyone. I found it very hard to share it in meetings because I thought, how is this ever going to help someone else? And it was ego. I didn't want to share it. But I have had opportunities to share that with someone who's had, you know, going through the same thing, or, you know, a newcomer. You know, I think I have more of an identification than I had before I had that experience. I can't explain it, but, you know, so actually it's my greatest asset today is the fact that I struggled like that, like I did. And, you know, so I've got that to share with other people, and yeah, and so I'm grateful for that. Definitely needed to have a hard road, I think, you know, to get that humility and the willingness. So cool, thanks everyone.